So I want to just welcome everybody. I'm Eric Teliokoto. I'm the director of the Southeast Asia program. And we have a really nice group of people here from all over. This is the most Burmese people I've seen in a room since I was last in Burma, which is really wonderful. I want to thank a few people. First of all, Ellen Lust, who's the new head of the Einaudi Center, who helped put this all together on her watch. So I want to just introduce her just in case there are folks who haven't met her yet. She's just starting. So thank you very much on behalf of the Southeast Asia program. The main person to thank is Chris, who is right here, who I'm going to have come up in just a second, who has really been the organizational mind and muscle behind this program for today. So thank you so much, Chris, for bringing everybody together to do this. And also I want to thank the staff of the Southeast Asia program who work incredibly hard to get events like this together as well. We have a number of very distinguished people with us today. Sean Turnell is here all the way from Oz on the other side of the planet, which is wonderful to have him back almost 20 years later, and has been through a lot in that time, which I think will come up probably today. And former Ambassador Derek Mitchell, who's here as well. We're really delighted to have him here. Thank you very much for coming all the way up here. We're going to have several people online. Miemie Wynn Byrd, who's a specialist on civil and military relations and how they interact in Burma, and Tom Andrews, who's the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar. And we will also have a recording, I understand, from Kim Aris, who is going to be with us in spirit. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Chris to come up and just introduce the program.
So this mic works. I don't need a mic. First of all, thank you everyone for being here. This is such an important day for us in the United States. Our country just faced a terrible military coup. And because I work in immigration, I deal with these voices every single day, all these fear, their hopes. And having you all gather here today for our cause is inspiring, empowering, like uplifting. And I want to give a lot of credit to Dr. Thamora. She made this event come true. I created the idea, I communicated to Ms. Thamora, and she helped me plan out everything. Thamora, Colin, Eva, Raisa, everyone, thank you so much. So the purpose of this event is, I call this the New Burma Strategic Dialogue. And I want to break into the etymology behind it. So we are in a time of unprecedented crisis. We have faced military coups before, 1988, 62, we have faced, but 2021 crisis, we have never seen it. Our country has collapsed, institutions collapsed, economic collapse in ways that's very hard for us to comprehend. But the good thing is, we have us, we have the people, we have Sean Turnell, we have Ambassador Derek Mitchell, we have everyone. So I want to take this opportunity to remind the exiled Burmese community that even though we have left the country after 2021, we have not abandoned our country. We are here to survive, to thrive, and then one day we're gonna go back to our country, we're gonna take care of our country. This is just the interim. And while we are here, like I see all of you, the Burmese students at Cornell, the new generation, we're gonna learn, we're gonna grow, and we're gonna unite our forces. Ambassador Mitchell said this morning, we need unity. We're gonna unite, we're gonna reclaim our country, right? So this is a step where we have to learn. We're gonna learn about the current situation. We're gonna look at our past. We're gonna look at what went wrong, what went right. We're gonna analyze that carefully, compare it to our situation, and build a strategic plan forward. In order to do that, we need education. So we're going to learn from Sean Turnell about the economy. We're going to learn from the ambassador about diplomacy. We're going to learn from Dr. Byrd about national security. Tom Andrew about, man, we have an all-star cast, right? So with that said, thank you for coming here. Is this a rally? Let's do this. Our time is going to come. Thank you, everyone. Now I want to invite Ambassador Derek Mitchell, all the way from DC, to give us introductions.
Well, Good evening or good afternoon to all of you, and I know there are people who are streaming online or watching it wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is. It is a real pleasure, a huge honor to be back here at Cornell. Whenever I come back, I always tell people my nephew went to Cornell, so whenever I'm invited, I come back. I was last here, I think, in 2016, so there are some old friends that I've seen. Those were very different times, but it is wonderful. I'll just thank all the people that organized this, that have been mentioned. Particularly, I didn't know you go by Chris, but I always say yeah, whatever it is, but Chris, yeah, congratulations on coming from conception to fruition. This is very, very important to do this type of thing. And I just want to say you have put together a tremendous lineup of colleagues, and it's great to see Sean, as always, first, face to face. Unfortunately, I won't see the others except on the screen, but they are really true friends of Myanmar. And it's just an honor to be associated with all of them, so thank you. I'm just going to say some words really from the heart, some very frank things, and I don't know if they'll be controversial or not, but they are what my true observations about things are. And of course, I am not a Myanmar citizen, of course. I just served as ambassador, but there is something, we talked about this earlier, there is something about the country, about Myanmar, that just cuts deep for anyone that touches it. And it sticks with you, and as it does, I know with everybody on this panel, it does with Sean. It is a special place, albeit with deeply traumatic modern history. So I want to just first take a moment to pay homage to the victims of the Thadinjut massacre in Sagaing 2 nights ago. I think there is something truly and uniquely bankrupt about a regime that considers it acceptable to drop bombs from the air, from a paraglider, on innocent civilians gathering peacefully in a candlelight ceremony to pray and celebrate their Buddhist traditions together. Perhaps only a regime that considers Vladimir Putin its model and mentor qualifies for that. But it is despicable, it is soulless, it is evil, and it should earn the opprobrium of everyone with a shred of humanity. It is, of course, not the first time that this regime has done something like this, in Sagaing in particular, but I want to make sure that we don't get numb to such atrocities or come to tacitly accept that this kind of atrocity is the cost of life in Myanmar these days. Our hearts, minds, and prayers should go out to the people in Chongwu and all those suffering continued violence in Myanmar. Now, historically, Myanmar has been viewed as kind of a black and white issue. Those have been doing this for many, many years. In the past, Lady in the Junta, very easy, black and white, or the monks in the military, the Saffron Revolution of 2007. There remain some things, indeed, that are black and white, that are right and wrong. We should note that. Military coups in response to elections that don't go your way, for instance, wrong. Use of wanton violence against both fellow citizens and those you don't consider citizens is wrong. Crimes against humanity, well, goes without saying. Public accountability, dialogue, due process, equal justice under law, dignity for all, they are all right, full stop. Those are just right. It should also go without saying for anyone with even casual attention to Myanmar that the military's 60-year approach to and rule over the country has been disastrous. Far from bringing peace, respect, dignity, and prosperity to Myanmar, the military has systematically destroyed the country's hopeful promise over and over for decades and made national conditions immeasurably worse through a combination of brutality, ignorance, and corruption. For decades, they have given themselves medals for killing their own people. They are equal parts destructive and entitled, but they are unlikely to go away anytime soon to the country's detriment. It didn't have to be this way. The 2010s, when I was there and after, offered an opportunity for a different path. No fundamental national problems were solved during that decade. But when the military eased its grip on the country, we saw a glimpse of the nation's remarkable promise and potential. That promise is immense, as I was fortunate to see firsthand as ambassador and see today in the young people who have had to flee their country after 2021, some of whom are in this room, many of whom are in this room, and others elsewhere. That said, anyone who is serious about Myanmar also knows that the country's challenges, beyond those posed by the military, are vast and complex, and always have been. Mistrust among its vastly diverse population is deep and widespread. A singular national identity has proved elusive, leading to continued conflict. The military banks on these divisions. Like a colonial power, they thrive on dividing and conquering. So, as Chris said and mentioned, I talked about this morning, national unity is not only an effective tactic to end longstanding civil conflict, but it's also essential to combat military rule and create the foundations of a truly new Myanmar. It is the defining challenge of the country. What holds this place together peacefully and sustainably without the use of force? Of course, though, this is easier said than done. But it is the defining challenge. Democracy is part of that. Democracy is a function of that. The only way you get that unity is through democratic norms, conversation, compromise, and such. Now, for those to whom democracy, peace, and human dignity are peripheral issues in international affairs, why does Myanmar matter? Well, it has long been a source of instability at the geographic crossroads of Asia, between a dynamic South Asia and a dynamic Southeast and East Asia. But it is a source of trafficking, of human trafficking, of drug trafficking, of weapons trafficking, of infectious disease, of vice, of scam centers you may read about. Billions of dollars are being lost through scams by Americans, but by Asians alike every year. It is an embarrassment to ASEAN. It demonstrates ASEAN's impotence to address sources of regional instability within their own ranks. And it distracts them from focusing on more productive issues that we care about too, including regional economic development. And in the process, Myanmar has become a source of entree for malign influence, malign Russian and Chinese influence in the region. There's a conduit for that influence. Russia is a major source of political and military support for the regime. Countless delegations have been traveling back and forth between the two countries in recent years, as Min Aung Hlaing himself supplicates himself to appeal to Vladimir Putin. China is taking most advantage of the situation to impose its national preferences and will over the country at the expense of its sovereign independence, of Myanmar's sovereign independence. It exercises overweening influence in what it considers part of China's rightful sphere of influence. Beijing extended a lifeline to the junta at the junta's most vulnerable moment, arguably since 1949. And now it has virtually unchallenged leverage over the country to protect its various interests, to safeguard its often questionable infrastructure investments, to gain priority access to Myanmar's natural resources, including but not limited to the critical rare earths we hear much about, to ensure its unrestricted access to the Indian Ocean, and in the process keep Western and particularly US influence in the country to a minimum and away from its western border. Myanmar is arguably a model for what China seeks in the region as a whole, which is overweening hegemony. India and Japan have sought to balance Chinese influence, but it's more likely that Myanmar under the junta is becoming a junior partner in a new axis that includes not only China and Russia, but North Korea and others of their ilk, who are challenging liberal norms and the liberal international order. The US, unfortunately, is AWOL from this. And I should say it did not begin with the Trump administration, to be frank, but arguably is worse than AWOL today. I don't know if you all saw the Associated Press report of the last day that documents the death of Myanmar children from starvation due to US aid cuts. We all in this room who are Americans should feel ashamed of what our country has done. It is a moral and ethical crime, even as our leaders claim there are no deaths from these cuts. There are no deaths. Well, there are. We must find a way to resume humanitarian assistance and aid somehow to the people. We must demand that as citizens. I should add, though, that contrary to rumors and junta spin, there is no evidence that Min Aung Hlaing's lobbying in Washington is making much headway. A lot of discussion of that. Trump, better for worse, not interested in Myanmar. And I doubt that solving Myanmar's longstanding internal conflicts is on his to-do list for the Nobel Peace Prize. I think even he can see that the Middle East is easy compared to Myanmar. Trump folks are engaged, or the State Department and the administration, they are engaged in a policy review. But so far, that does not appear to be headed toward a major change in policy, if any change. We'll have to see, of course. It does not seem that. It is at least encouraging that the United States appears to be holding firm on negating the legitimacy of the sham election in December and January that the junta is looking to hold, even if that election is gaining recognition from some neighbors. It should go without saying that a sham democratic process is no democracy at all, and that a sham process will not bring lasting peace to Myanmar or the region or beyond. In the end, we all must recognize, everyone must recognize, that there is no military solution to the problems of Myanmar. Guys with guns are not the answer to the complex political, economic, and social problems of the country. That has been demonstrated amply over the past 75 years, by the military in particular. Now, for others, arms may be necessary to defend themselves against military brutality and oppression, and defend their rights and dignity. That's understandable. When one side has all the guns and they are using it wantonly. But just because you wield a gun doesn't make you a king. Fundamentally, the country needs political and social reconciliation through painstaking dialogue and reconciliation understanding among the country's diverse citizenry. That is hard work. That has not come through the barrel of a gun. So many brave citizens have been sacrificing so much, sometimes everything, for a life of freedom in Myanmar. It is sobering. It is humbling to watch. And again, when I was ambassador, I witnessed firsthand the astonishing quality of the Myanmar people. As noted earlier, that inherent quality has not dissipated. It just, once again, is being brutally suppressed. And much of it is now outside the country. Those of us who now care about Myanmar, who refuse to give up on the country, should do what we can to help cultivate that talent for our own sake, as many of them can enrich our society, but also for Myanmar's future. Young talent like Chris and others here in this room and watching wherever you are around the world represent that promise. And those from older generations need to give space to them, contrary perhaps to traditional cultural norms. And in turn, young Myanmar need to figure out what kind of country they seek to create and not mirror the mistakes of the past. Likewise, we all should keep our focus on what's most important in all of this. I made reference to that earlier, the Myanmar people. Remember what this is about, the well-being of the people in the country, the Myanmar people. We must get humanitarian aid in and not politicize it. Not everyone is an activist or chooses to be one. If they do, they should earn our respect and support for their courage and commitment. But if one decides due to personal inclination or necessity to simply live their lives, to simply survive, that is understandable as well. It's understandable to be tired. Not being part of the active resistance does not make one a traitor. Violence against those who aren't fully revolutionary is nonsensical and wrong. It's easy for those on the outside, for one, to fight to the last Myanmar. Seems to me best, though, to think of the well-being of the Myanmar people first and foremost, both to win the war and ultimately win the peace. Ultimately, the promise of Myanmar will also only be realized if it can cultivate truly courageous, visionary, and principled leaders. It has been the absence or failure of such leadership in Myanmar that will continue to hold the country back. Leaders who are principled, but listen, are empathetic and able to find reasonable compromises across divides. The alternative to such leadership will simply be more of the same, no matter who prevails in the current struggle. When ambassador, I said to Myanmar students that I saw when they would come to the American Center and they all wanted to speak, they would all tell me what their thoughts were. And I'd said to them, I get it. For 50 years, you have not been able to speak. You all want to speak and tell me what you think. I said, but democracy is not just the right to speak. It's a responsibility to listen. There needs to be more listening. Few countries understand this basic democratic principle these days, including our own country, for those who are American here. We have lost that notion of how to listen to each other, to compromise, to reach across divides. Our common futures depend on learning this as soon as possible. Indeed, democracy around the world is not so much in decline as under attack. In Myanmar, but also in Hong Kong, and Thailand, and Ukraine, and Sudan, and Nicaragua, and so many other countries around the world. We need, and here as well, we need to show solidarity with the people of Myanmar, just as we must show solidarity with those others, and at home in defense of our own liberty. We must not look away, but keep a light shining on what is happening everywhere. Continue to bear witness and act and stay strong. In other words, do what this event does. So to tell the story, to shine a light, to get the conversation going. And I want to thank Cornell, I want to thank Chris for organizing this. I want to thank you all for listening, and I look forward to hearing from the distinguished panel that follows. Alo Jesu Temade Kumya. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. That was a heartwarming speech. Thank you very much. My name is Magnus Fiskesjö. I'm also, like Eric, faculty member here at Cornell and a member of the Southeast Asia program. And my role here is to help moderate. And I start by announcing that we will now hear a message from Kim Aris, which is pre-recorded. Kim Aris, of course, is the son of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who is currently still in prison in Myanmar.
Good day, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with you through this message. You are gathered here today because in one way or another, you care about the plight of Burma and our ongoing fight for democracy. I want to begin by saying clearly, I am not a politician. I am a concerned son of Nobel Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, speaking out because I care. For many years now, I have been advocating for the release of my mother and for the freedom of all political prisoners in Burma. This advocacy has brought me into conversations with friends and partners across the United States, Europe, Asia, and beyond. Through these conversations, one truth always stands out. When we speak of a new Burma, we must remember that no step towards genuine democracy can be taken without the release of political prisoners. When regimes jail political prisoners, they try to imprison hope itself. But hope cannot be jailed. There have been many times when the situation looked grim. I have found myself deeply worried about my mother, who is now 80 years old and unjustly detained. Not under house arrest, as in years past, but in solitary confinement in prison. I need communication with her to know that she is safe. Unless there are formal, independently verified guarantees that her well-being is assured, I cannot accept vague assurances. My concern is not for her alone. My mother is one of many. Thousands of other men and women remain imprisoned simply because they dared to dream of freedom and justice. They too deserve our voices and our solidarity. At the same time, I am encouraged by the strength of Burma's youth. Despite all the hardship, young people continue to fight for freedom with extraordinary courage and resilience. Earlier this year, in my visits to institutions like Cornell, Yale, Harvard, and Stanford, I witnessed firsthand the impact of their energy and commitment. They are carrying forward the torch of hope in ways that inspire me every single day. Without the brief period of freedom and democracy brought to Burma by my mother and the NLD party, these young people would never have experienced the benefits of freedom and would not have the same strengths as they have today. Of course, the struggle for democracy is not the only crisis we face. Since the coup, Burma has endured mass displacement, deep humanitarian need, and repeated natural disasters, such as the devastating earthquake in March 2025. International agencies have shifted, working increasingly with local civil society rather than the junta. This is a positive step, but it comes with challenges. Strict compliance frameworks are important. They exist to prevent aid from leaking to the regime and to preserve public trust. But when these frameworks are applied rigidly, without adapting to Burma's volatile and repressive environment, they can create new risks and unintended harms for those delivering aid on the ground. In my own work to deliver life-saving humanitarian assistance, I have had to take the utmost precautions to protect the brave people who help me. I rely on trusted partners, and we must move quickly because time is critical. Compliance and bureaucracy should never be the reason that innocent people are left to suffer. Every day of delay can mean another life lost. Through my efforts, with the help of many supporters, I have been able to assist thousands of victims of the March earthquake and support over 20 camps of internally displaced people across different states of Burma. We have installed clean water units, sanitation, and delivered essential aid. We have also funded safe hospitals, provided medical care for victims of war and psychosocial support, and much more. None of this would have been possible without those who stood with us, donors, partners, and ordinary citizens who simply cared. I thank you for making this possible. While we support those in need, we must also remain vigilant about the junta's political maneuvers. In the coming months, the regime plans to hold sham elections. These are not a pathway to democracy, but rather a strategy for survival. China, in particular, is positioning these sham elections as a way to bolster the junta's legitimacy. This provides the generals with a veneer of credibility that shields them from pressure and sanctions. For the junta itself, the question of releasing my mother or other prominent prisoners will only ever be a calculated move. They will consider it only if they believe it gains them a strategic advantage, easing international pressure or splintering the pro-democracy coalition. That means any call for her release must be part of a larger strategy, one that denies the junta easy exits and coordinates diplomatic pressure to narrow their choices. I know that in the room today, people of different generations are gathered together for a meaningful conversation about how to support Burma's democratic movement. You are here to consider not only how we progress, but how we sustain the movement for the long road ahead. That fact alone gives me encouragement. Despite the hardship, I believe in hope. I believe in the courage of Burma's people and in the strength of solidarity across borders. The world must not look away. Every act of solidarity strengthens those fighting for freedom inside Burma. It is important to remember the beauty of Burma beyond the hardship. Ours is a country of rich culture, deep traditions, and extraordinary resilience. When you stand with Burma, you are not only standing against injustice, you are also standing with the people who long to share this beauty with the world. May my mother and all the good souls of Burma find the justice they deserve. And may each of you leave today with a renewed determination to stand together with the people of Burma, to learn more, to support and to carry forward the cause of freedom and dignity and peace. Thank you.
I am going to take that as a yes, and I would like to thank the organizers of this very important event and forum for not only putting all this together, but also inviting me to participate in this program that seeks to shed light on what has truly become an invisible crisis to much of the world. The fact is, you cannot solve a problem that you cannot see. So it is so important for forums like this to shed light on the crisis in Myanmar and the opportunity to confront this crisis in Myanmar. I am very honored to be able to make a few remarks as part of this very distinguished panel, and I want to apologize in advance for not being able to stay for the entire program. I am the director of the Southeast Asia Human Rights Project at Harvard University's Asia Center, and also the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Myanmar. And I'm currently investigating the latest round of vicious attacks on innocent people by the military junta as I complete a comprehensive report to the UN General Assembly that I will include in an address to the Third Committee of the General Assembly at the end of this month. I issue 2 comprehensive reports each year, one to the Human Rights Council in the spring and another to the General Assembly in the fall. But I quickly found out that these are simply not enough, given the reality of what is happening in Myanmar. So I've been issuing a series of in-depth reports that have included the impact of the military coup on children, the very difficult conditions facing women and members of the LGBTQ community, how the military is able to obtain the weapons and financing necessary to sustain its attacks on Myanmar citizens, and which specifically, which member states are responsible. An examination of the question of legitimacy, and upcoming reports on the impact of the military coup on the disability community, as well as an examination of the issue of accountability. And you can access these reports by going to the United Nations website, the Human Rights Council website, the Special Procedures Division, punch my name in, and those reports are available to you. Now, since launching a military coup in 2021, the junta has arrested, tortured, and murdered tens of thousands in Myanmar who have openly resisted military rule. Of the nearly 30,000 arrested, more than 22,000 political prisoners remain behind bars today. Using sophisticated weapons of war, the junta has been escalating its attack on civilians, schools, clinics, monasteries, churches, and mosques, and centers housing those displaced by the violence have been systematically attacked by military aircraft, artillery, and well-armed troops. Over 100,000 civilian homes have been destroyed in arson attacks since the coup, while at least 7,300 people have been killed. Meanwhile, nearly half the population of Myanmar have fallen into poverty, with nearly 22 million requiring humanitarian assistance and 16.7 million facing acute food insecurity. To make matters worse, the devastating earthquake that struck Myanmar on the 28th of March has impacted an estimated 17 million people, causing nearly $11 billion in damage. The junta responded by turning a natural disaster into a humanitarian catastrophe. Junta forces blocked the delivery of humanitarian aid in areas outside of its control, while threatening, harassing, and interrogating and extorting relief workers. After declaring a humanitarian ceasefire, the junta proceeded to escalate its attacks on civilians, launching more airstrikes on civilian targets in the second quarter of 2025 than any previous quarter since the coup. There are three things that the junta needs to sustain itself. It needs money, it needs weapons, and it needs legitimacy. The good news is that there have been governments and private institutions willing to deny the junta access to the money and the weapons that are linked to war crimes and crimes against humanity. Following a government investigation into the transfer of weapons and weapons materials from Singapore to the junta, for example, weapons-related materials from Singapore dropped by over 90%, 90. Overall, international weapons transfers to the junta has decreased by over a third. Bangkok Bank, once a key source of financial services to junta-controlled financial institutions, has informed me that they have suspended these services. And there is now clear evidence that sanctions imposed by the US in 2023 have seriously disrupted military supply chains and revenue flows. The bad news is that despite their effectiveness, targeted sanctions have stalled. Governments have been unwilling to join Canada and Australia in imposing sanctions on Myanmar Economic Bank, the junta-controlled bank that is its principal source of military procurement. There have yet to be any sanctions imposed on the junta's newly constituted State Security and Peace Commission. And in July of 2025, the United States rolled back sanctions imposed on 4 companies and individuals tied to the junta. Now, with respect to legitimacy, the junta, as we have heard, is attempting to achieve international legitimacy by orchestrating what can only be accurately described as sham elections beginning on the 28th of December. A very specific step that governments can take, particularly democratically elected governments, will be to denounce these so-called elections for what they will be, or failing that, refuse to acknowledge whatever emerges from these elections as legitimate. You cannot hold a free and fair election when opposition leaders are arrested, detained, tortured, or executed, when it is illegal to criticize the junta or the election, when journalists are in prison for reporting the truth. Few in Myanmar will accept a blatantly rigged, illegitimate election and its outcome, and violence is very likely to spike during the election period and beyond. Unfortunately, too few states have taken a clear public position on this election scheme. And I was frankly surprised and very pleased to see the United States condemn these so-called elections at the UN General Assembly 2 weeks ago. In the meantime, the international community has failed to come up with the funding required to meet a deepening humanitarian crisis. The draconian cuts to US aid funding were made all the worse by the way they were made, without warning, denying opportunity for those whose programs that rely on these funds to prepare. I was on the Thai-Myanmar border when the earthquake struck and saw just how the US went from a role that where it could be counted on to provide immediate support, and would also step up to play a leadership role in mobilizing and coordinating that support, to a nation being absent, missing in action. In April of 2025, the World Food Program was forced to cut food assistance to over 1 million in Myanmar. Underfunding has led to the closure of at least 65 healthcare facilities serving over 200,000 people. As of September, the UN's baseline pre-earthquake humanitarian aid plan was only 12% funded. All aid programs have received only $400 million in total funding in 2025, well below the need. And without new funding, food assistance for more than 1 million Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh will end completely in December of this year. In Rakhine State, civilians continue to be trapped in a vortex of violence and oppression. All parties to the conflict in Rakhine, the military, Rohingya militants, and the Arakan army, have been accused of human rights abuses against civilian populations. More than 150,000 Rohingya have fled to Bangladesh in 2024 and 2025. Among them are ethnic Rakhine escaping escalating violence. The rare piece of good news that I found discovered fairly recently was the Thai government responding to sweeping funding cuts by allowing residents of refugee camps along its border with Myanmar to work for Thai employers, providing a vital lifeline to a population threatened by ration cuts. The interim government of Bangladesh has announced, however, that Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh will not similarly be allowed livelihood opportunities. In another piece of good news, despite the draconian cuts in USAID funding that were announced in the spring, the U.S. has announced $60 million in humanitarian aid for the Rohingya in Bangladesh during a high-level conference at the UNGA the week before last, and urged the interim government to allow Rohingya who are in the camps in Bangladesh to seek livelihood opportunities. The fact is, we know that when the political will exists, international action on the crisis in Myanmar can be effective. We know that it works, and that makes international inaction extremely frustrating. States have not built on the momentum created by the sanctioning of key junta-controlled banks. Governments have not developed a coordinated plan to isolate the junta and constrain its ability to attack and oppress the people of Myanmar, including by increasing sanctions that deny the junta the weapons of war that it continues to use to attack civilians. They have failed to provide or pledge the level of resources necessary to avert a grave humanitarian catastrophe. With some notable exceptions, states have also failed to adequately engage, support, and empower the organizations and institutions that are building the foundation for a democratic and rights-respecting Myanmar. The fact is, Myanmar is facing a critical juncture. Its people have demonstrated a remarkable courage, resiliency, and determination to overcome the crisis and secure a democratic, human rights respecting future for their children. To be successful, they need and they deserve the support of the international community. That is why it is so important for those of us who are in a position to provide influence and support for people in Myanmar on the front lines of this crisis. All of us who are citizens of nations like the United States have an opportunity and, in my view, an obligation to step up and call for strong, concerted, responsible action that we have yet to see fully come to fruition. So for being willing to organize such an event, for being willing to shine a light on this crisis, and inviting me to participate, may I say thank you so very, very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and welcome to Miemie Wynn Byrd, whose image we can see. Can we also hear your voice? Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm coming in from Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Would you like to pick up the thread? And then we can have a discussion between the three of you. Would you like to?
Sure. My piece, I have been told, I was going to talk a little bit about why Myanmar is strategically important. So mine is a lot more dovetail into what Ambassador Derek Mitchell has said. Is that okay? Because many times United States. Yes, Americans they do not understand the strategic importance of Myanmar and why they should even care about that. So I just want to make that my 15 minutes to be to help them walk through that. Is that okay? And I'm going to share my PowerPoint if that is okay. So as I said, Myanmar trajectory will shape the balance of power in Indo-Pacific, and hopefully I can walk you through that, why that is so. It's really important. Myanmar is the last democracy on mainland Southeast Asia at this point, right? So being able to restore democracy in Myanmar is a victory for democracy. And so while everybody is focusing on the Ukraine, that I would argue that Myanmar is the Eastern Front for in the fight for democracy, and as such, it can make the difference in balance of power, depending on where Myanmar goes. And so, ignoring Myanmar seats a critical geopolitical crossroad to China. Right? So that's what I'm going to try to argue. So geography. And many of the Americans may not know where Myanmar is or Burma is, right? So here is the little map that I have put that I show over here. It connects. Myanmar is a critical juncture, a crossroad, because that's where Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Northeast Asia or China comes together, and it happens at the western entrance of the Strait of Malacca, which is one of the major strait for trade. Right? A third of the world trade goes through Malacca Strait, right? Strait of Malacca. So it's really, really a critical juncture. And also historically, those major power who want to control or dominate Asia has always tried to control Myanmar because of its geography. It's geography. And so also Myanmar is the only country in mainland Southeast Asia that has direct border with China, and that leads to west end of the Malacca Strait, west end of the Malacca Strait. Okay? And so 80% of China's energy need has to go through this Malacca Strait. So they always had this they call it Malacca dilemma. Right? Something happened to the Malacca Strait, then they will have a lot of problem with getting energy through there. Right? So they call it Malacca dilemma. So it's their vulnerability. Right? And also Myanmar has 2,000 kilometers of coastline. Facing on the Bay of Bengal, direct access to the Indian Ocean. So we call it backdoor to the Indian Ocean. So if China is able to get control of that 2,000 kilometers of coastline, that gives them a lot of strategic advantage. And so here is some additional map where you can see on the left all the energy transport route goes through the Malacca Strait. And so by being able to put this pipeline in Myanmar, give China a strategic alternative. So China has always been concerned that in time of war, the Malacca Strait will be, it's a choke point, so it can be controlled, and they couldn't move on. They will have problem with their energy supply. So Myanmar was a really critical strategic alternative for them. So that's why they built the dual pipeline from Jiaopyu port into Yunnan of China. Right? And they have a pipeline built, and they have been trying to build the rail and road on top of that pipeline. In addition to the geographical location, Myanmar is full of natural resources. It's rich in natural resources. One of the key mineral has been the rare earths. Right, and China has been trying to control the supply chain of rare earth, and so that it can control, leverage over the global tech and defense industries. So in 2021, 71% of China rare earth imports came from Myanmar. in any given year, people have said like about between like 40 to 70% of China's rare earth supply comes from Myanmar. And as you know, the rare earths are needed for, defense equipment like F-35, satellites, EVs, smartphone, any type of critical electronics today have, these rare earth minerals. So having control of or monopoly of these rare earth mineral gives China a lot of leverage and power, right? And but the recently though, and the rare earth mineral mines right there, I put it in the map over here. If you can see, is right on the border area of China, Myanmar, and recently this area has been taken over by the Kachin Independence Army, one of the resistance armed group, and so that created a little bit of an opportunity for others. But I think the window of opportunity is very short. And in addition to, as I said, Myanmar is full of natural resources, and here are some of the China's investment: hydropower, mining, a lot of mining, transportation, and in addition to rare earth, Myanmar has copper, it has uranium, gold, you name it, it has it. So it's and also of course LNG. Myanmar has a lot of LNG in its coastline, and if it was able to properly get access to it, Myanmar would become the 5th largest exporter of LNG. Right, so that's not only it's geographically important, but it's also full of natural resource. So there is that makes Myanmar this crown jewel, in the words of Bertolt Littner, in their Silk Road or OBOR or BRI, whatever you want to call it. Right. And this string of pearl strategy, this was really coined by Booz Allen Hamilton back in 2004, show, how China's strategy is to trying to get all the port area, maritime port, to have to control those ports. And if you look at Myanmar has, no other country has 5 stars. Myanmar has 5 stars in this string of pearl strategy. So that's why it makes it a crown jewel. It's really critical. Myanmar is critical in China's calculus. So at the beginning of the coup, China has a choice. Is that going to choose the more stable environment, democratic Myanmar, or it's going to go with its political ideology and geopolitics, right? And China, naturally prefer authoritarian regime because they're easier to control, as well as, and especially Myanmar regime is highly corrupt, and corruption is something that they use, it's their MO, their business model, China's business model, where they can really manipulate the country. So, and China has chosen a geopolitical ideology. It's actually, everybody say Myanmar is really important to China because of the economic investment. And I think, yes, but I think their geopolitical is a lot more, important than the economic. Because economic, you can look back at Myanmar history, dealing with Myanmar, when Myanmar was democratic, in democratic transition under Aung San Suu Kyi, Myanmar was a lot more stable, and there's a lot of economic growth, right? But under the military regime, successive military regime, there has always been violence and conflict, but China really prefer that because for them, the political ideology and geopolitics is more important than their, economic growth investment. So what can U.S. do? I think that, Tom Andrews and Ambassador Mitchell has talked through that. There is already Burma Act of 2023 that provide, authorize a lot of things that they can do. The non-lethal support to ethnic armed organization, People Defense Forces, all the pro-democracy organization. And it's already, authorized communication, command and control, coordination mechanism. It's already provided that. It's already authorized that, not provided, but authorized that. And so, even the military, former military members, which is the military defectors, if they're, they can be supported for the democratic transition or reform of the military. You can support that. So if you want to know more about the actual act, here is some excerpt. I just highlighted it earlier. So it's already provided, and we just need to implement what the Burma Act has already authorized. But, as everybody said, it has not been done. And additionally, I want to say, everybody said, oh, Myanmar military is so powerful. They have so much firepower, it can't be done. But according to my review of all the revolution of, that were successful in history, the three elements keep on appearing. These three main elements. I call it DIP. It's defection, people support, and international pressure. And so international pressure. It doesn't matter how much firepower the people had. Is actually at the end. Is these three are the most important. So it goes with what Tom Andrews said, as well as Ambassador Mitchell has said as well. It's not so much about firepower. So international pressure element. That's something that I think the United States and the international community can do a lot. And as for people's support, we had I think Blue Shirt Initiative has done an opinion poll earlier this year, and people after 4 years of after the coup, they still reject the coup and they support the pro-democracy resistance forces. So. And then defection-wise, we're seeing regular defection occurring every day. But I think that in the international pressure, that's where the United States can really lead the charge. And so the last is Myanmar is the last democracy, as I said, in the mainland Southeast Asia, and I would argue that it's an eastern front. Ukraine is the Western Front, and Myanmar is the Eastern Front. A free Myanmar can prove that authoritarian expansion is not inevitable, even at the doorstep of China. Okay. And democratic success strengthen rule-based order and U.S. credibility. And then because of the U.S. leading role, regional partner will take, cue from the outcome. And also Myanmar, what's happening in Myanmar is not just an internal problem. It has the transnational instability. So, for example, Myanmar has become the scam operation, a cyber scam operation has taken hold in Myanmar, and it has become much larger. And last year, 2024, $10 billion lost from Americans. They have been scammed, and these scam centers are operating inside Myanmar, and some in the Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand. But Myanmar, the one in Myanmar, has gotten much bigger, and because there's military is kind of protecting them and involved. Military junta is involved with that. And another thing is the Myanmar, just remember the Myanmar military junta, despite their firepower, they only control less than 30% of the country today. And that's go back to what both Derek and Tom said about the Myanmar people resiliency and also their ingenuity and commitment. And they have been able to push back the military in spite of firepower differential. So just with a little, and all this, they're doing it without much support from the external actor. Whereas meanwhile, the military has China and Russia helping them and providing all their arms and bombs and drones to them. It's just the pure commitment and that their desire to be free is keeping military check. So a little bit of help in the form of international pressure and humanitarian assistance, non-lethal assistance, they can really do a lot more. So thank you so much for listening, and I will give my time back to you.
Thank you very, very much. So now turning the microphone over to Sean Turnell.
Thank you, Magnus. Due to the wonderful speeches of Derek and Tom and Miemie, I probably don't need to spend a lot of time talking about basic facts of what's going on there, which we know anyway, which is good. So first thing, just to say, really big thank you to Chris, to Thamora, Magnus, Eric, everyone here at the CAP team at Cornell. I was last here 19 years ago. And it's, such a great pleasure to be back. And so as soon as the invitation came, I thought, okay, I've just got to do this. So thank you to everyone for that. But, even that is a bit of a commentary on the whole situation in Burma. Because I was thinking, now, why did I come to Burma? Why did I come to Ithaca in 2006, 19 years ago? Now, the first reason why you'd come to Ithaca is for the weather, of course. And I came in winter. So from balmy Sydney, I arrived in Ithaca, and I don't think I'll ever forget that day in November 2006. So that's the first reason. But the main reason I came was to look at the archive, the incredible archive that's here at Cornell. And that's a fantastic thing, and it's something Cornell should be really proud of. It's a great resource of the US government, but I think that's sort of being withdrawn, a little bit of support on that, which is, very short-sighted, to put it mildly. But anyway, so I came for that. I was writing a book about Myanmar's monetary and financial history, and I looked around the world and I thought, where can I find out all the stuff that I needed to know about Burma? And of course, I looked all around the world, but above all, I looked at Burma. That was the one country I couldn't go to get any sort of reliable information in 2005, 2006. And sad to say, here we are in 2025, and that's the same thing. So I came here for that. So even, the whole thing that drew me to Cornell in the first place was a symbol of successive failures of military regimes that our speakers have spoken about. So it's sort of, bittersweet as you would why you would come to Ithaca to study Burma rather than going to the country itself to find out what you needed to know. So that's the first thing. The second thing, there's so many wonderful points again made by everyone, and perhaps in the discussion we might talk a little bit more about those wonderful diagrams that Miemie put up. It's such a terrible thing, the whole Jiaopiu story, which again, hopefully we'll have a chat about. Tom's point about the sanctions and so on. Just one thing I wanted to add to that, which is that back in 2006, sanctions were on the table back then too. It's remarkable how that whole discussion, unfortunately, hasn't gone away. But what's different now, in 2006, there was a belief that sanctions could work in changing the behaviour of the Myanmar regime, like it was a way of trying to, modify what they were doing. What's interesting now, and what makes, I think, the whole conversation, sanctions should be different now, is that now I think we understand there's no changing the behaviour at all. Right? Min Aung Hlaing is not really swayed by this. The day after the coup, he effectively lost 20% of Myanmar's GDP. So he's not going to be concerned about economic constraints on the country. But what sanctions are about now, and this is what Tom's point was so good in highlighting the banks and so on, it's about reducing the regime's capacity to wage war. One of the interesting things about Burma's long history is that there's been a kinetic war, a war of people and much bloodshed and all that. But there's another war that's been going on for 75 years in finance and money, as various regimes have attempted to control all of that. So really sanctions are part of a story now of limiting that ability of Myanmar's regime to wage war against their own people. So I think it elevates the issues that Tom was talking about. Let's see if we can choke off those resources, because it's funny, even though, as Derek pointed out, Myanmar's junta has very few friends around the world. It has, you know, those great economic success stories of Belarus, North Korea, Russia, Kazakhstan. You know, you roll them off, and we're not talking about 5 stars of economic activity. But those countries, those so-called friends of Myanmar's junta, insist on being paid in hard currency. Now, Myanmar, the only way they can get hard currency, the only way they can use hard currency is through the banking system. So by putting the pressure there, and there's lots of ways that we know how to do that, we actually directly limit Myanmar's regime of getting the material that they need, the air-delivered munitions that everyone quite movingly spoke about. So, you know, it's a very effective story. I think that's probably it for all for me to say. Oh no, there's one other thing. One other thing is, I've thanked Chris already for getting me over here and setting all this up, but I've got to thank him for something else. He came out with a wonderful, wonderful phrase yesterday. So I've been teaching about money and finance for decades. And one of the things I like to impress upon my students back in Sydney is that money in 2025 has no intrinsic value, right? It's not tied to precious metal or anything like that. The only reason we value money is that it's issued by a trusted source that we in common trust. So we accept money for our work, to buy and sell things and so on, simply because we recognise that other people value that unit as well. As soon as that faith, that belief, that trust, as soon as that disappears, money itself has no value at all. And Chris came up with a wonderful phrase yesterday, that money, monetary value and exchange rate is a referendum on belief. Now in Burma today, the kyat, the currency, is worth 80% less than it was on the 1st of February 2021 when the military ordered the coup. Now to use Chris's phrase, a referendum, 80% unfavourable vote of the market, people putting money where their mouth is on that Myanmar regime. So that statistic alone is, I think, a very sincere expression of just how badly Burma's junta has gone.
Thank you. Let's see, we should perhaps launch into an open discussion already. How about that? And how should we do that? I will look around the room and then walk over to you with the microphone. How does that sound? So is there anyone who would like to raise a question to one of our panelists?
Let me start with this.
Please.
I've talked to you a lot.
Please.
I've talked to you a lot. I've asked you very difficult questions, but I still got more. So this is for both Derek, Sean, and Dr. Byrd, all of you. So you've all worked with Burma as ambassador, as economist, as a security advisor. Right? What do you think is the single most important thing that the international community got wrong about our country? And what should we do going forward to not make those misconceptions? You want to take this?
Me? Everyone's pointing fingers at me. You do it, you take this one. The thing that occurs to me, I think I mentioned it in my introduction to a degree, is the lack of understanding of the true complexity of the place. That this was not a simple situation, that to understand, even though I completely take the points of my colleagues here, but what what we need to do in terms of policy and to shut off their weapons, shut off their money, shut off everything, access of their families to international hospitals and schools and whatever else, just make it as hard as possible on them, to squeeze them so they change their calculations. Get all that in the near term. But in terms of the broader, understanding the realities of the country, of just how difficult. If the military stepped aside tomorrow, then what? And I think that's the hard question that the NUG is struggling with, and the whole country is struggling with, and whether there was a military or not, that Dasu would be struggling with today. I think, it's healthier to understand the country as a country. And I think in the past, I've used this line that we used to say, and it's good for the Southeast Asia program here, that for a time we thought of Vietnam as a war, not a country. And I think that Myanmar needs to be thought of as a country, not a cause. And for many people in the West, it had we were always a cause for all of us because we truly believe in it, and it's still a cause. But to truly help the country overcome its challenges, we have to think about the near term, the immediate challenge, as well as the realities, and try to bring that all together in how we're dealing with the challenges today, and even challenging people on the ground in that regard.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Miemie Wynn Byrd or Sean Turnell?
Sure, I will go with that. Since Sean,
Yes.
I think that the international community keep on saying that they need the military there. Right, military. If without the military, Myanmar will become balkanized or fractured. But what I wanted people to know is that Myanmar military is the source of instability, a source of division, because they continue to divide and conquer. Right. So if the military isn't there, I know every country needs military, but you need a professional military. You don't need a militant gang. That's what their organized criminal militant gang is what Myanmar military is now. Without them, they will have a chance to talk through. None of the armed group have the level of firepower that can create this level of destruction. Only Myanmar military has that. Right. So if you remove them, then it will give them some peace to start to work through these divisions. And these divisions are also, by military junta strategy to make sure that people are divided. Right. So for me, for the international community, I keep on hearing, oh, we need the military there. If military isn't there, the country will fall apart, balkanized. But in fact, I would argue that military junta has been the source for division and instability.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd probably just extend on that from Miemie. I think the biggest single factor was a lack of understanding at a sort of practical level that the military hadn't gone away. Intellectually, funnily enough, I think everyone did understand that. Certainly I understood it at the time. But however, caught up in the moment, those exciting years, 2016, 17, 18, it was possible to believe, I think at that moment, notwithstanding an understanding of the country, which certainly my Burmese colleagues obviously had more than I did, but it was very easy to get caught up, that the things were moving, the energy of the young people who were using the opportunities to build things, to plan things, come up with the ideas, new businesses, all the rest of it, to temporarily shelve, if you like, the idea that the military were always just that far away. During the whole time I was there, it would come up periodically, and one of the things I've said to people since coming back is that, probably a week or a couple of weeks wouldn't go by without some sort of rumour of a coup. So that whole time I was up in Naypyidaw, all you'd need to have was a couple of army trucks parked together in a service station, or the merest sighting of any sort of activity to get a rumour going around that there was going to be a coup. But I think that illustrates the sort of unease that sort of sat just below the surface. But in a sense, I think, notwithstanding that deep visceral understanding that the military were there, an idea nonetheless, that Myanmar might just be becoming a normal country. And that didn't turn out, obviously, to be the case. I think in a similar vein, what we didn't really understand, again at a practical level, is the ruthlessness of the military. So, we're all very aware of the terrible atrocities committed by the military in Rakhine State, but other places as well. But I think, even though I think so many people thought that there would be something they would do to try and drive a wedge between the international community and the civilian government and the forces of democracy in Myanmar, the fact is that when it came, in Rakhine and so on, I think that blindsided a lot of people who probably should have been better prepared for it. And I think in many ways, deep down we knew something was coming, but when it came, I don't think people were properly prepared for it. So, yeah, so I think that in terms of things we didn't know but we need to know now, I'd probably zero in on just the role of the military.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Start over here. Maybe you can say your name.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. This sort of segues onto this last question about the role of the military, and also what we need to learn from past mistakes, particularly perhaps as Americans. One question that I have as I watch what is happening in Myanmar unfold is what are good models for reintegrating the military into Myanmar society once we have democracy? If we take a sort of comparison that's sometimes thrown around, there's a fear that Myanmar could end up as the next Iraq. You could overthrow Min Aung Hlaing and there is still no peace because, there's just, the military hasn't gone away. It forms all of these other ancillary groups that are just driven by self-protection. And I'm wondering what are positive models perhaps for how to have a peace and reconciliation movement once there is a chance for democracy, once the military is overthrown, once there's a sufficient number of defections that Tatmadaw has weakened enough that we can begin to imagine Burmese democracy in a more stable future.
Oh, yeah, hang on. So which of you would like to say something to that? What is a model?
So I think there are various, if you like, intellectual models of this that have been applied in different places at different times. Probably the one that most obvious comes to mind is the story of Indonesia, right, which is very much dominated by the military. We had a transition into democracy, but of course, if we look at Indonesia right now, what we're seeing is the military creeping back. So I think the most important model, the only one that has ever worked, is a prosperous economy. Because you've got to, in the end, give military-aged men something to do. It's the world's biggest challenge, civilizationally and historically. And to put it in really practical terms, there is one country that was totally devastated, dominated by war, and turned it all around through economics, through good economic policies, sound institutions, rule of law, property rights, etc. And it's called the United States of America, right? That story after 1776, that extraordinary takeover of the likes of Hamilton and all the people who decided to assert the importance of economics in state building, but just in really practical ways, having a prosperous economy that gave people something to do, something to aspire to, and not seeing in the military or in terms of a political career a path to wealth.
Miemie, did you have something to add? Yes?
I think that more practical sense, professionalization of the military. It's currently, Myanmar military is not a professional military. Right. So the best way to do it is also using a lot of the defectors. We have seen a lot of defection from like a lieutenant colonel and down. And these are younger military personnel who really wanted to serve the people and want to serve in a professional military organization. Right. So that's why I'm, I appreciated the Burma Act, which included, the reforming and engaging these defectors. Because who can reform the military organization the best is through them. They understand how it has been brainwashed, and to redo that. So if we can bring those cadre of these defectors, young officers, and then start to help train them. What is the international standards? What are the international standards for professional military organization? I think that is going to be, I think, more practical way of reforming the military. Yes, I totally understand. We can't just let go of everybody and we'll have Iraq, right? But to do that, I think that to have that reform in post-conflict, we need to really start to work now with these young defectors and starting to educate them, starting to prepare them to do that task. And it has to be, I think, we can't come from outside. I think it has to be done from inside. So that's why I'm thinking that those young officers would be our best bet.
Thank you very much. And we have one more question, please.
Thank you so much for the amazing conversation and insights. I was wondering, more so looking at the frame back in Southeast Asia and South Asia, what can stable neighbors of Myanmar do to contribute in this situation towards democracy, specifically Thailand and India? Because we speak a lot about China, but what about other stable democracies right on the border?
Oh. Again, the fingers. Should I sit up here? I thought I was just doing the introduction, but apparently. Yes, I will sit up here with the notes. Is this? No, it doesn't say. No, well, you ask a very important question. The issue is not what can they do, is whether they're willing to do. I don't know who asked the question. I had my back to the person there. No, the neighboring countries have a critical role to play. India can play a much more, and they did for a while in the 1990s, play an important role of encouraging or pressuring, the junta to change its ways. But they have other interests, as do the Thais. The Thai leadership, largely military leadership, have special relationship with the Myanmar military from the past too. So they could do more in Thailand to support the refugees, the people that have crossed the border. They can shut down sources of support. I think they're doing some of that, but they can do more of that, shutting off the banking and the sources of military hardware and sources of funds. The Indians can do much more to say, working with us, working with the Thais, working with ASEAN, working with Malaysia, who's chairing ASEAN, work with Japan. Collectively, we can provide a different vision for what is acceptable to us and what we want to support as a vision for the country, one that is united, but has federalism or at least rights for people, and balance the influence of China and say, what we would like is for the country to be sovereign, independent, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that the Indians have their own interests. They're very hostile to Americans talking to them about Myanmar. It's always been the case for a long time. They have their border problem with the cross-border separatist movements. They believe they want to balance the Chinese influence. They have issues in Rakhine as well, with Sittwe Port and the multimodal transport operations and trade and such. So they just fundamentally have a different view than we do on what brings success. And they do believe that just what Miemie said, which is important. There are too many countries out there that say the only thing that holds this place together is the military. The military has to be there, otherwise there'll be instability, and we get the brunt of it in India, or Thailand says we get the brunt of it. But the fact is, as I said in my comments, and Miemie echoed, the military is the problem, has been the problem. Doesn't mean the military has to go away. You have to have a military of some kind, but not this top Madal, not this leadership, not this political involvement. It has to be a completely new conception, because they're not the answer. They're not part of the solution. They proved that they are part of the problem.
Thank you. Did Miemie want to say something?
Yes, back to India. India wants to balance China, right? But I think that they got it wrong in Indian. It's not to cozy up to the military junta. Military junta will play them, but they were never going to be their friends. And a lot of the border instability, many times the insurgents were supported by the military junta. So for India, the best defense or the best way to balance China is making sure Myanmar is democratic country. And I don't know why they don't understand that. I think the border area, when I visited the border areas, those provinces that are bordering Myanmar, they understood that, but Delhi do not have that understanding. So there's also, India is not one monolithic. There's Delhi policy making, and then there's the border provinces like Mizoram, Nagaland, and Manipur. So yes, and also on Bangladesh. Bangladesh, has a real concern with the Rohingya population, and I think that the best way to solve the Rohingya population issue for Bangladesh is Myanmar to be democracy as well. Right. It's as long as the military junta is in charge, the Rohingya themselves don't want to come back, and they will not be safe. So again, supporting the democratic movement will be in their best interest, but there's some distortion is going on in their foreign policy.
Again, just to echo the wise comments of my immediate predecessors, it's interesting. The best interests of both countries, India and Thailand, just to pick up those two, is actually a stable Myanmar. And that's the one thing that they've never had, despite 75 years of effectively the military being in charge. So, and Thailand really stands out, right? The instability that it just keeps being visited upon Thailand, of waves and waves of people. I'm always struck by the biggest thing that Burma exports these days are people. And most of those people cross over the border into Thailand. So Myanmar is an immense source of instability to Thailand. But then we have India, and here, Derek, I'm going to steal something from what you told me earlier today. India seems to think it can outdo China in doing sort of dirty, disreputable sort of deals, when the comparative advantage, of course, of India is the world's largest democracy, and it likes to tell us that every so often. And one would think that that would be the leverage it has, rather than to sort of mimic China and countries like that try and do deals with the military.
To add to that, the record shows they keep getting their lunch handed to them by China. It's not succeeding what they're doing, yet they keep doing it. So I don't understand the Indian calculation. They think they're playing at a different dimension. The Americans don't understand, and we're too idealistic. But frankly, on a basic realpolitik way, they're losing, and they seem to think they're doing great. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. New question?
Hello. Thank you so much for coming and answering all of these questions. I have dozens, but I'll try to pick one. So it's unclear to me from what I've read and experienced on the subject that there would be certain buy-in by ethnic minority groups in Myanmar assuming that the military junta falls and democracy is reestablished in Mandalay and Yangon, if those ethnic minority states will actually want to participate in a, I guess, pan-Burmese democracy. So I wanted to know, in a yes or no sense, if you think that if there will be kind of a splintered outcome or a unified one, and if there is a splintered outcome, do you think it might turn out to be a federalist one? And does the United States provide some sort of model for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Who goes first?
Since I'm up here, I might as well say something. No, you asked the $64,000 question. I mean, that is, as I say, the defining question of how does this place hold together? How does it? I mean, will it be federalist? Will it be confederalist? I mean, those are different things. Federalist is part of one country, or confederalist with different identities that somehow come together at a central point. We don't know. But clearly what's happening now is, the reality of the country is outside in. I mean, the Bamar have tried to control the future, Bamar military in particular, but Bamar Buddhists generally have tried to define the future of the country since independence. And the people on the periphery, different types, have demanded their rights and their dignity, individual rights of their ethnicity and their cultures. And now they have force of arms, and they're succeeding on their own terms. And they're creating facts on the ground where they control territory, they control areas. We don't know if that's going to be good or bad. It can turn out very bad for people on the ground, or it could just be a federalized crony state, which was always something I worried about when I was ambassador, that you just have models, you just replicating models with guys with guns, end up running everything and having corruption just federalized. So people still have, injustices thrown upon them. But it seems now that you're going to have these enforced by arms, and the military does not have the ability to recapture control of much of the country, particularly in the ethnic areas. What becomes of that? Are they going to come together and realize they're likely not to be independent? They can't stand on their own. Likely, I don't think they're viable personally. I'm not an expert, who knows what will happen, but so how do they then work out a political arrangement between them? On what terms? With what borders? With what lines of authority? I mean, how does that, that's a huge, as I say, the military can leave tomorrow. And you have, even though military is a center of a lot of the problems of the last 60 years, but this challenge of how this place holds together has been going on longer than 1962 and beyond. So this is a work in progress. I don't have an answer for it. It's going to be an interesting question. Anyone else?
So I've been really quite struck in all the visits I've, tours that I've done around the world talking to young Burmese people about a very, very different notion of what Burma is amongst the younger generation compared to the older one. And amongst, Gen Z and people like that, I don't think there's any doubt that some sort of just federalism is at the heart of everything. Like the conversations now begin with that, and then people talk about other things. And to be sort of slightly critical of people like myself and my generation amongst my Burmese friends and so on, I think in a well-meaning way, it wasn't like that. It was almost the reverse, that somehow you had to reform Myanmar, had to get its economy, and that get that running, etc., that shared prosperity would gradually bring about peace and you could bring people together. But it was sort of an after the event. Reform first, get things right, get the economy going, then you could start to talk about a fiscal framework. And in very practical ways, that's more or less what we were doing. We were, reforming tax systems, bond markets, public finances and all that, but with a view to getting it right. And then, as I say, thinking about how that could then be devolved down into some sort of federal structure. What I'm struck with now, amongst the Burmese diaspora and even contacts inside the country, a full-on understanding we're going to begin with that fiscal federalist, just to put it in the economic terms first, begin with that first and then do the other stuff. So I'm sort of quite confident in a sense that when the revolution succeeds, that the story will be different than it was before and ultimately more successful.
Thank you. Miemie, did you want to add, or we go to the next question?
Sure, yes. At the beginning of the coup, many of the ethnic EAOs are a little bit concerned. They weren't sure, but now they the biggest transformation you can see is with AA. AA started out as Rakhine for Rakhine, but now AA is starting to understand after 4 years that their survival, their independence is dependent on everybody being free, everybody, being free together, everybody becoming, federal democracy. So I think that there's a lot of a transformation that has occurred within the ethnic minority leaders for federal democracy, and also from the Burma side. The Burma majority they used to think federal democracy is a dirty word, but now they're the one that really advocating for just the equal, inclusive federal democracy. So, but the because of the military bombing and killing every day, they don't have the luxury of sitting down and working this political arrangement out. So, if we can get rid of the military, right, and they will have a little bit more space to really work. Because as these ethnic minorities get control of their territory, they realize they have to govern, they have to provide services to the people, and they start to realize that they will have they're experiencing shortage of human resources. And so if they were a part of the larger federal system, then they can kind of work those out. It's cheaper by the dozen per se. So I think they're starting to understand that as they're having to as they control their territories. So I'm optimistic. And then there has been, I think USIP has done some surveys and study, and they also saw that all the ethnic the misunderstanding and division are lessening as people starting to work together. So, and also another piece is this is the first time in Myanmar history, all these armed groups are working side by side, fighting one common enemy. And that is creating also building, understanding and trust among them. So I think there's a lot of raw material for them to work through it, but they do need time and a space for them to work out this what type of political arrangement they want to have. Because, we look at the world has like 25 federal democracies, and they have 25 different ones, right? So Myanmar will be will be one more of their own, but they do need time and space and, peace to work that out.
Thank you so much. Now, I think we have somewhere beyond 15 minutes left, and answers have been a little long. So I'm thinking there are 3 people waiting to ask questions. How about the 3 of you ask your questions concisely, and then our speakers, yes, please, our speakers collect their minds around them, and we can arrive at the end of our conversation. So, first of 3, please. Go ahead.
So let's say we have the victory of the revolution, and we have a proper democratic system. How do we combat the institutionalized racism across the Burmese and across the majority, the ethnic Burma, the Buddhists, and the hatred of other religions, other ethnicities, and how do we give them a seat at the table?
Thank you very much.
Yes, I also would like to raise the same question that always the challenges in Burma. I like to follow up with the ambassador, conversation that, regarding with his question that Burmese Buddhist nationalism is one of the main agenda in Burma, I think, that we have to be addressed. That's not only the issue of the military, but also even so-called democratic government time, even under the Aung San Suu Kyi supervision, or the same practice, So that's we have to be in, of course, not only the military is issue for this. Another thing is like related with this, trained to be a racist since childhood, like us. Always ethnic nationalism also very much, so not only in Burma area and Buddhist, but also other so-called ethnics, so-called recognized ethnic. I like to say that that's really important work, recognized ethnic, Sometimes people talk about for ethnic, so am I included or not? Always, questioning, because of always exclusion policy is legitimized not only by the military, but also so-called democratic. Even today, so-called leader or revolutionists, they are not so clear as well. So inclusiveness, always otherness is problematic in Burma. So that issue also very important strategically tackle in the future, so-called democratic, whatever federal or whatever way, we need to be raised and included.
Thank you very much. One more. Over here. Oh, your phone dropped.
Hi. So it's like compared to the other questions, my questions might be a little bit easy. And very good to see all of our Myanmar experts, all together. I am woman human rights defender from Myanmar. So my question is two questions I would like to raise. One is, during Ambassador Derek time in Myanmar, we have the golden time of U.S. Myanmar diplomatic relationship, but I think this time is the worst time we are facing with the U.S. foreign policy, on Myanmar. So I know, Sean, you might have, some idea for, how we can persuade this current administration in terms of, economics benefits, for them to focus on Myanmar. And Ambassador Michelle, how we can advocate current administrations, for getting back their interest on Myanmar. And Miemie, you are as a security advisor, your insight will be also very, very important. And my second question is, we have always this kind of forum events and panels on Myanmar, but I don't want just, people came and listen and going back, I think we have to aim more than educating people. So what would be your, recommendations, for each and every individuals in this room, how they can support Burma or Myanmar? As an individual, what could be practical actions they can take, to help Burma and Myanmar? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, since you have your notebooks out, one more. One more. Two more? No, one more. I think squeeze in one more. And if you have more beyond that, keep them and ask after. Time's up. Yes, please.
Thank you. First, I just want to say thanks to everyone involved, in making this forum happen. And my question is actually similar to very recent questions we have before. As we all know, Burma has been a home to many minorities, and I want to know what the future hold for the minorities, even after that revolution succeeded, or if in a time that in the military ring. So I really want to know that answer for that question. And yeah, I've been looking for that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And who would like to, are you adding something? Very quickly.
Sorry.
Very quickly.
Hi. Thank you for asking the second question. I'm a student here and I study landscape architecture. And honestly, like for the past 4 years, so I went through the coup and I lost my friend. I carried that body during the coup and all these things. So even before that, I was studying architecture, but now I'm like stay studying, but I completely lost the hope for the past 4 years somehow. I don't know. I'm still doing, but I still lost the passion. And now I'm at that point that after the education, I just want to go back home because I don't know, like whatever you all discuss. And I also have all these friends who are there, and they also have all these revolutionary troops. And even inside different revolutionary troops, there are so many rotten and like corrupted things happening, even within the so-called revolutionary troops. So at this point, I'm like, well, let's stop it, and then I'm just gonna go there and I'll just do whatever I can as an architect or landscape architect, whatever. So particularly to Sean, like you have been there and you were there 2 years, and even before that, and what do you say to us, like people like us who just like, I'm not intellectual, I'm not that familiar with policies and all these inside intellectual things, but I just want to do something. I'm a citizen and I care about my country. And that's my question, I guess.
So our 3 panelists, can you do 5 minutes each? We can go a little bit over. Yes? A few minutes.
It won't kick us out, but Derek has to catch a flight.
So he should go first.
I'm staying to the end either way. Oh my goodness. I mean, these are huge, huge questions, but I mean, every one is important. Everyone goes to the core of the challenge, both here and inside Myanmar, and all of you who are Myanmar people, what do you do? What can any of us do? Because we all care in this room, but it seems so difficult to figure out what you can do in this situation. And I don't have a silver bullet answer for any of this. And the first question on institutionalized racism and how you deal with Buddhist chauvinism, that's really for Myanmar people to address more than an American to talk through. As I mentioned, I've referred to that as something as an obstacle in the country. There is deep-seated mistrust, and there is chauvinism, and there is that hierarchical sense. And it could be based on age, it could be based on religion, it could be based on ethnicity, but that has to be overcome. And I think it was Sean who talked about, and Chris and I talked about it, is new generations. I mean, there are, and maybe older generations who can speak up and say, we need a revolution of thought, revolution of mindset. The old ways are not going to cut it. That whatever comes out of this is not return of what came before, because that simply didn't work, whether it was military or non-military. That we need to have a new approach. And I do hope that, as Sean said, and I experienced myself, but you never know, that new generations do think about egalitarianism, that look at the ways of the past, of these divisions, these artificial divisions, and say, we are one people living on this land with different cultures and diversity, and we are going to find a way together to overcome this, because it's the only way we're going to succeed. The only way this is the true revolution. It's not defeating the military, that's necessary. It's not sufficient for the new Myanmar. And we had kind of hoped, that Dawsu's moment would be a beginning of that, and that was, she didn't have enough time perhaps, but it did not happen. So now it's a true revolutionary moment, one hopes. And what can you do? And what can you do generally is, act locally. Not everyone, as it says, an activist. Not everyone, as you say, is an intellectual. Not everyone has the bandwidth or the desire to be a leader. Well, it's not about leaders. It is about leaders. It'd be good to have leaders, but not everyone should be a leader or the national leader or the one. You can be a leader in the community by just getting together with colleagues, talking to people inside the country of diverse backgrounds and finding commonality and saying we have to demand something different in the future. And let's see if we work bit by bit on building that from the ground up. It's a small thing you can do. It's not going to be, the determining factor in the future of the revolution or the current revolution. But I don't have an easy answer for what you can do. I mean, you can go and protest. You can raise the profile of the issue, make sure it doesn't fall into the shadows. Those are the easy things. I think everyone gets that part of it. Get it reported on the newspapers, get it in the UN, so the ways of the last 30, 40 years, those are the ways. But I don't know how you persuade Trump to pay attention, except the only one maybe is China. I don't know if he cares. I mean, we don't know what his China policy is. But the one thing that does run through foreign policy, bipartisan foreign policy in Washington, is the China influence. Right now, they have their way in this country. And this, as I mentioned, this is a model for what they like in the region. This is a way to get to India or ASEAN. Don't give them a foothold here. They have a foothold that is against your strategic interests, and they have the place to themselves. Let's find a way. The U.S. has to have, I've long viewed, I'm talking too long, I'll just end with this, that we should have an envoy based in the region with a few people and go and coordinate our allies and partners. Coordinate India, Thailand, ASEAN, Japan, and others to say it is not in our interest that China have the lone say, the determining say on the future of this country. And it is in our interest to try to find a solution that works for the Myanmar people and for us, that's sustainable. And let's see if we can leverage that international consortium that has differences on many individual interests, but should have common interest in a vision for a stable, secure, democratic country. Can we leverage that to bring a new future to the country? It's a long-term diplomatic proposition. I don't see any alternative to something like that to get ourselves at least in the game, or not even in the game, to use American power in our alliances to try to balance China and also balance the junta, try to assist the opposition to find a more just solution here. Anyway.
Is it Miemie goes next?
Do you want me to go next?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. So as for the racism and, that Buddhist nationalism, I would argue that is something that the military has utilized to, keep people divided, right? They have weaponized it. But not only, but the thing is, everybody talked about Buddhist nationalism, and but also amongst each of the ethnic group, they also need to come together. Right, like Chin, between the Chins, and between the Shans, and between the Karen. So I think that, but nevertheless, all these divisions were strategically, purposefully, the military has sown that and continue to fan that division. Right. So I would, so once, if you have the military removed, then you can start working on that more organically. And also because of the coup, a lot of the, when there's a crisis, the community and the society, it's unfrozen. So it's going to refreeze. So if you want to refreeze, when it refreeze to be different, then you have to be involved, right? You can't just sit on the side and I can't do anything. Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. And, leadership, right? Leadership is about action, not position, right? So be that. I think that you can see how one individual can make a lot of difference. So just start with locally, act locally, and do what you can do. And as for the U.S. interest, and especially those diaspora there in the United States, we have a lot of responsibility. And framing it in a way that, that will resonate with U.S. policymaker. And back to China, right? China is one. So I would argue that China cannot take Taiwan until it has dominated, completely buttoned up Burma, right? Because of that Malacca dilemma. So, use that. And also the Burmese diaspora has to go beyond just working the issue within the diaspora. There are other organizations that you can partner with and Burmese diaspora itself also need to come together, cooperate. You can't ask people inside Myanmar to cooperate because cooperation is the key to winning this. If you're not cooperating outside, how can you ask people inside to cooperate? Right. So find a way to cooperate, start cooperating with your friends, and then you can increase the circle.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I shall be very quick. Just to say, if there's institutionalised racism, you change the institutions. And the most important institution is the instigator of so much division in Burma, which is the military. So that's the very first thing of all. Then some of the other stuff starts to come in. And I mentioned before my optimism about Gen Z and the new thinking, it seems to me, surrounding Myanmar. So terrible evil that we've all identified, but hopefully on its way out. On the issue of the US, I tried a transactional approach when I came over here a few months ago. I find that it doesn't really get any transaction, and it's a bit unworthy, frankly, of America in any case. So the big issue, I think, as Derek and Miemie both said, focus on China. That still gets a self-interest, national security tick and all that, but it also plays to America's strength. When things go wrong around the world, nobody says, where is China? They all say, where is the US? And that's the strength that the US has. So that sort of alignment of idealism, the idealism that I think most people around the world have, including me, the US is still the city on the hill. Keep that with the sort of more self-interested national security stress with the Trump administration and others. And then the final thing, that lovely question about what to do and so on, I think you're doing exactly the right thing. You're doing architecture. Now, there's no country that needs architects more than Burma, right? There's so much rebuilding to be done. But all the practical skills that you're getting here, that's an incredible thing to do. And your desire to go home expresses, your feelings towards the country, and it's a very practical thing to do. At an even more practical, though, prosaic and trivial level, keep on doing all the things the diaspora is doing. And I'm saying prosaic and trivial just because what I want to point out, something that I've absolutely been inspired by, and I'm hoping that people in the audience here has noticed, because I've been trying to give as much leg as possible while I've been sitting here, and that is I'm wearing a pair of moving on socks. So I would urge everyone to do that sort of thing, right? The Moving On organisation, they've been selling socks around the world to raise money for the struggle, and the fundraising is incredible. It's about $100 million that have come from Burmese diaspora communities since the coup to fund for the resistance. So there are some really little small-scale things to do as well.
Thank you.
And so a few words from Chris to wrap this up.
Great.
Yes?
And I'll conclude this. Please, you'll conclude this. So I just want to touch on the final question. I will conclude this. We're hungry. We're going to be fast. So, right, I work in immigration, in asylum law, and I've heard thousands of stories just like you. People trying to maintain hope, people losing hope. And I want to say that it is a struggle, and it is okay to lose hope sometimes. We get tired. And what we have to think is that everything that we can't solve this problem on our own. We have an economist, we have a diplomat. He can't, Sean, you can't work as a commander-in-chief, right? You're an economist. So we have our roles, so we have to expand into our roles, fulfill our potential. Are we an architect? Are we a doctor? And play whatever part we can play. No part is too small. And it is okay to lose hope sometimes. It is okay to be tired. That's what Derek told me this morning. It is okay. But we'll keep moving because, as I said in the speech, we have not abandoned our country. We are not running away. We're going to come back. We're going to come out with a bigger force than they could have ever foreseen, right? They won't be able to imagine the power that we're going to go back to our country with. All the youthful energy, the lessons we learned from the past, from the present, from these institutions, we're going to win.
Do you want to say goodbye? Then it falls to me to thank all of you who have come and join the conversation and let the conversation continue is all I can say, beyond thanking the panelists once again. And Tamora?
I'm just going to say the conversation is actually continuing. For those of you who want to listen in, there will be a somewhat different configuration of our panelists today, with new additions as well on Saturday, the 11th at NYU's Wagner School. There's a link online that you can sign up. So if you would like to continue the conversation or listen in, please do that. And I guess I'll give my plug for one of the set of activities that is really important for nurturing the next generation is all of the activity that's going on in the virtual education space. With educational institutions being really shut down or controlled by the military. That is a place where even if you are not Burmese and you have some form of academic expertise or policy expertise, you can be part of teaching the next generation from afar. And so I just encourage you to look into that and get involved as one other practical option. So with that, if you're interested in continuing, Saturday afternoon, we'll be back in New York with Sean, and you could listen in via Zoom.
Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you, Miemie Wynn Byrd, also. Thanks for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to hang up. Aloha, everybody. Aloha.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.